costs, and if they say no, they don't see any questions about meals currently. Like those are all
Gotcha.
hidden. Yeah.
I'm finding it hard to articulate like sometimes what I want to see. I just want to make it super simple for everybody. And it doesn't necessarily have to put the information in the form. Um, like I don't mind there being a separate form for EIR like there is for RTA. Like, you know, we may want to try to tweak it instead of it trying to specifically follow our current reimbursement form. As long as it has all the information that AP needs to process the reimbursement, I'm okay with it not specifically following that form. So if that is what's causing it to be so segmented and I feel kind of too detailed, I'm okay with it being changed as long as they get the correct information that they need to pay people.
So I'm going to share. Can you give me the ability to share? Because I want to make sure that, I guess I should back up and say, like in our initial conversations, like as a whole group, like with ER and then with you, and then just like in the build out, think our takeaway was for every box that was on the form, like the PDF, that there would be like an equivalent digital box that they would input in so that it would input onto that PDF form. Is that a bad takeaway? Is that an incorrect
Well,
takeaway?
I mean, I think we need that information. It just doesn't have to be collected in the same way. Like we do have to know per day, you know, are they getting breakfast, lunch, and dinner? We do have to know their mileage or, you know, their Uber receipts, those kind of things.
Right.
Um, I just, I think, how do I, like I said, I can't articulate this well. If it's simpler for you to do it in another way that's not having to fill out all those boxes, then you know yeah. I mean,
Okay. So I think that's one thing I want to, because we can change it. Like that's not a big deal. I think I want to understand the way that it's going to flow the best for you all. In my mind, when we were looking at this, the ability was to give them, instead of having to write this out by hand, they were going to be able to enter it digitally. And then the PDF would, of course, like be generated and be sent to whoever you need it to be sent to. But, and the calculations would be done. So you take that human error piece out. Uh, but it's kind of sounding like maybe that doesn't, like, do you need each of these pieces?
yeah, I mean, we have to know how much somebody's getting reimbursed for, I mean, for the grant and for, you know, audit purposes. Of course, we need to know what the lodging amount is and we need to know what portion is mileage. Like we do need to know that. I just didn't know if the questions needed to follow specifically like each box. Like I don't, I'm not a programmer, so I don't know how the connection between Airtable and like how this stuff flows together. But if that was one of the reasons why we were having to have so many steps to every question, then I'm okay with us modifying this in some way to make it simpler for the end user.
So when you say steps, talk to me about the steps, and we can kind of look at it and you can say like, I hate this and we can get rid of it. But like, so like looking at meals, where do you want to ask them like, are there meal costs? Because I think that's the first question. Like, because if not, I don't think we want them to have any questions about meals on any day that they input it, and that's currently how it works. But maybe that's not how you want it to come across.
Can I ask this? Is there a way, like at the beginning of the form, like, can you scroll up to the top?
Yep.
Where you're putting your destination. If we had a checkbox there that says in state or out of state, and if you choose in state, then that would populate a set of, um, you know, a different parameters in here versus if you check the out of state box. I don't know enough about how this works to be able, if that's how that would work.
So potentially, I think one of the reasons that, like one of the hiccups we ran into that we kind of talked about was if they're gone for like 4 days, and if this is not true, then maybe it's not relevant, but like they could have in-state like dinner, but once they're in wherever they're going, like Chicago, it would be out of state for 2 days and then in state like that.
We don't do it that way. So if your final destination is out of state, then the whole thing gets reimbursed at the out of state rate. If your final destination is in state, the whole thing gets reimbursed at the in state rate. So
Okay,
we
so
don't
I okay. So
do it that way.
that's helpful because I think when I asked it originally, I must have misunderstood it and thought it was like you could have in state for your travel day and out of state the days that okay. So it's
We don't
only one or the other.
we don't change the amount. It's just if you're I mean you don't get like a certain allowance for the airport and then you get like a different it's not like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, when we do ours, like if you with the day you drive to the airport and fly out and all that stuff, that's in state, and then when you're out of state, it's out of state. Okay,
I
so
say
it's
that
just
there's never been an audit finding on any of our audits for doing it that way. So that's just how we've always
okay.
keep it the way we've been doing it. Unless we get told otherwise, we're gonna keep doing it that way.
And then do you do mileage for in-state or only for out-of-state
Yeah, we
travel?
do mileage for in-state for both.
Okay. But if they chose in-state, so right now the way it works is um we so like this one here, you wouldn't need it for each day. Like where the meals in-state or out-of-state, that would go. That we would kill that. Um, but and then it sounds like instead of having them put in the amount, if they indicated breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we would just run the calculations in the background for the ones that they indicated, and they wouldn't have to put the amounts in. We would just have a calculation that was for in-state meals based on how many they selected, and a calculation for out-of-state meals based on how many they selected. And they would just say breakfast and lunch.
Yeah, like I would say like day one, maybe if there was a section for I don't know how you want to do it. If you want to have, a section for meals and a section for lodging, or because I don't know how this has to be split up, but like say if there was, meal section, um, and if you said were there meal costs, yes, and then it goes to meal section, and then you'd have, you know, day one and you have a checkbox, breakfast, lunch, dinner, day two, like um that's how I feel like it would work better. I mean, you're kind of depending on that. I mean, we can of course verify it on against whatever submitted to make sure that their meals weren't provided, and they that would be verified. But it's kind of an honesty system too, like on the time of day. Like we're not going to go back and check your flight times. If you're doing something you're not supposed to, then if somebody finds out, you're going to get in trouble. But um,
Right.
we don't have the resources to be that granular with how we review things.
Gotcha. And then right now, we ask that question, the meal cost, I guess, question, but of course, like lodging and that stuff too is asked for each day. And if they only travel for 3 days, they don't see, like day 4 through 7. But of course, if they're gone for 7 days, then they see one for each day. Is that not a layout that you like?
Um, I guess I think it just seemed like it was. I felt like it seemed confusing to the person entering it. I mean, that was what they were saying to me when they were having to do day one, all these questions. Like if there were um instead of them having to do it for each day, like if there was lodging cost, could that be a selection that was done at the beginning? Um, maybe when you're at the front page where their meal costs, if you click that, yes, then certain things would populate with their lodging costs. Instead of having to answer the questions yes or no for every single day, I would like it to be more you kind of feed from initial selections. So that way you're not presented with all these things unless you really need to fill them out.
So the one question I have for lodging, and again, this is like in our frame of work. So if it doesn't apply to you all, then we scrap it. But like our people don't have, I guess it probably makes sense for everyone. There are no lodging costs on the last day, right? Because you're coming home. Anyone filling out this form, if you say yes, there were lodging costs, if we take it out of the by day segment, they're going to see all 7 boxes, like all 7 days. Does that make sense? And they're going to have to say, like, this is my lodging cost for day one and day two, day three, but I can't make them required fields.
What if we
If
just had, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, like, if I show them all 7 and all 7 doesn't apply to them, I can't make all 7 required, short of saying go ahead and enter 0 for any that don't apply, which we could do that.
Could we even just have like an area for lodging where it's not split out by day? If your lodging costs for $800, you just type in the $800 instead of having to segment it out by day.
I'm fine with that. I think I did it by each day because that's how it's done on your form. So if you don't need it broken out that way, we don't have to break it out that way. I'm just breaking it out according to how you guys have it on your form.
Yeah. Um, well, what's the feedback from the team on this? Like I said, I'm okay if we need to modify this. We do your grants require a daily cost or can it be reimbursed on a level of total? Do you know?
Ask it again another way. I'm sorry.
So instead of the the traveler having to break out their lodging by day, is there anything that would prohibit them from having just one line for total lodging costs to show the lodging cost over the cost of the trip? Or does it need to be, it may need to, does it need
We
to be
don't we
broken?
don't do it. I think what you're asking is, does it need to say each day the hotel is 225 versus a total of $1,000 at the end of the week or the last day or whatever the thing is?
Yes.
Yeah, no. Usually they do the total because really what they're after is the number of days. And the guidelines within the Department of Education related to the EIR grant, and Amanda jump in here, are really that, and actually this is probably not applicable to Amanda's project. For us, it's that we stay in accordance with the guidelines of the district. So whatever the district requires is what we have to follow. And I think one of the pieces of confusion, Amanda, is like the I think in the form that you're editing, is it true that it has all of the if then things behind it? So it might be helpful to see what the user view. Is that true?
I'm going to say what you said a second ago. Ask me that again. Are you saying you want to see like the live view that the user sees instead of like what's hidden here? Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful. When I talked to Whitney about it, I think Whitney did one. Is that true, Stephanie? And then maybe a couple other.
Yeah, yeah, she gave me some feedback.
Yeah, and she said it was really easy.
Um, so she has some, I mean, there were some specific like glitchy things that we can go over, but just in general, that was other feedback that I got. What it was, if there was a way to make it simpler where they weren't presented with all those questions for every single day, I think that would be ideal.
But it is possible not to have like mileage every single day and not to have lodging every single day.
You definitely wouldn't have mileage every single day, like,
Because if you put in and you're hanging out
but
at the hotel, right, you're just
I don't know enough about like how all this that comes together to say if there's um a way to do that. Like if we may need to keep the lodging at every single day. Meals, I think we need to simplify, and I don't want to have them typing in an amount because that just provides a room for error on calculation.
so let me ask you about that when you say an error, but before I ask you that, let me tell you why I'm asking that. So when we do meals here, I'm gonna say no transfer to so when they say meals and you say in state, you can't put an out of state amount here.
Yeah, I don't want them to type in an amount. I just want it to be like they
You
check.
can't.
they get breakfast, lunch, or dinner instead of them having to type in an amount. That's what
I
I
mean,
prefer.
that part we can do. I just wanted to say, like, calculation wise, like if you put 6, it's not going to let you run with it. There won't be, they can only either leave it blank or put in the amount based on the selection here. So,
Yeah,
like, go ahead.
and I say I appreciate that. I just don't want them to, if somebody to type in a, it's less work on AP if they know that this amount is calculated and it's not being input by an end user. So they know um, that they couldn't have accidentally typed in
They
10.
can't.
No, they can't. They can only
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like, and so that's not me saying like you have to do it this way. One of the reasons it's built this way is because instead of giving you, like on the back end, instead of having a field for every single day for whether like an in-state meal field and an out-of-state meal field for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, um, there's just one. There's one breakfast field for day one, and it can either have the in-state or out-of-state amount. But like this is what comes up. Like it has to be 8. If you put in-state, it will give you this error if you put in anything that's not 8 for breakfast. And
Okay.
if you choose out-of-state, it's not going to let you run with it either. It will not let you go forward without making sure it matches what you guys say the parameters are. So if
So
you
there's
come back and
validation.
say it goes up, we can set it to go up to whatever you need it to go up to.
Okay. I mean, I like that there's data validation. I would just prefer for it to be a checkbox instead of having to type it in. That's just my
Okay.
preference.
And I wrote that down. I did write check, but I just wanted you to know like anything where you say like it has to be a finite amount, we can lock it in to prevent the user from doing any incorrect math. Um,
Can I go back? So going back to what Whitney said. So she says the first page asks the user to click all items needed for reimbursement. I clicked registration. A corresponding field does not later populate for registration. I put the amount in the other expenses field and was later allowed to upload a receipt for this amount. It might be helpful if one of two things happen. Either a field populated entitled registration, so the amount can clearly be entered as a registration amount, or a note could be entered to identify the other expense as registration.
yeah, we can add a registration option. I think this is one that we talked about a little bit.
Yeah,
And like some people have it done up front,
yeah,
right? So it's
but some
yeah.
don't.
But yeah, we can definitely put in a registration field. That's not a problem at all. And I'll
So
make
if
a
we
note.
add the registration field, would it just could we have it automatically populate into that other expenses box at the end, like into that as part
Yeah,
of that?
so one thing to kind of um like in that vein up here in transportation costs. These pieces, the taxi, the Uber, the parking, not the airfare, because I think the airfare on your page is all on its own. Let me look. It's been a little bit. So other transportation, even though they're putting it in, it all calculates together and they don't have to run that calculation. It all calculates and drops it here.
Okay.
And we did that because when we had talked, there was like this idea of the same issue we run into, which is like when you just say transportation, people forget they had airport parking or they forget they took an Uber. And so we have those fields to be like, oh yeah, let me put that amount in. But if that's cumbersome and you're like, I just wanted to say the same as the PDF is, which is other transportation, and they need to remember it themselves, we can do that too.
What would other transportation be outside of Uber, parking, and the airfare?
Um,
Trying to think.
your taxi and stuff, right? Like it's all of these pieces, right, that come
Yeah.
in. It's everything outside of mileage, I think is how it's currently calculated. So
Metro or something. It could be
yeah, yep. So we break it out because our teachers forget and then they'll send in a receipt and we're like, well, that money's not been, we didn't know you had an Uber receipt for, like $72. So we make them think about it. But if you're like, this takes too long and we don't want them to think about it, we don't like chasing the receipts or the numbers. We want both things to come in at the same time. So we try to minimize human error as much as possible.
The other thing, and I noticed this too when I was testing, um, on the review summary page, it does not give a total amount. So it's like it doesn't give the person entering it a total of where they are. So it's like you were having to like calculate it yourself as you're going through. Like it populates on the form, but you can't see it to verify that what you put in is correct.
So you're talking about this page? Or it's okay if you're not. I just want to make sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so like I don't want them to have to calculate their lodging receipts. Like I think shouldn't that calculate on its own?
So you and I talked about
After a
this.
while?
And I think the EIR people, we had talked about it a little bit too, and we can take this out. This is totally up to you all. But do you remember we talked about your second page? There's like on that PDF where there's like a total, and we were saying you wanted them to make sure that the total that they had put in actually equaled the total amount of the receipts that were being submitted. And so this is what we built for you for that, where they calculate the receipts, and then if it doesn't match to what they've put in, like what they've entered, it says like, hey, it doesn't match. And the idea was to like make sure that they've entered all of their receipts. So that's why this was built based on that second page that's in the paper form where you attach those pieces.
Sorry, can you hear me? I just got a like Zoom not responding message. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh no, I'm having all kinds of problems today with my meetings. That's what's going on. So yeah, so the feedback I got about that from multiple people was negative. So I think we should probably eliminate that and just have it instead of having them have to recalculate all of their stuff. I would like it just be calculated by the data that they're inputting on their as they're inputting the reimbursement.
Okay, so it does do that already. We only built it because you had this here and you said a lot of times the total didn't match the receipts that were submitted. So that was like our means of ensuring that you didn't have that issue. But if you don't like that, we'll just take it out.
Yeah, I think we should take that out.
Okay.
What was the other? Oh, it said the check boxes at the bottom, like RTA attached and agenda attached, are not checked, even though I uploaded both documents. So I don't know if that's. I don't know if that's like how that's mapped.
The checkbox at the bottom of.
I think it's at the bottom of the. Oh, at the final version, there's a checkbox that says RTA attached and agenda attached. It
In the
wasn't
PDF?
in the final PDF of the reimbursement form. It was not showing there. Those were not populating.
Okay.
They were uploaded.
Okay.
The other thing.
So quick question before we move forward.
Okay.
Because I'm not 100% on this, but I was thinking, or I want to make sure we had a conversation about how those two pieces are verified after the submission. So is it the teacher that checks those off, or is it the approval person that checks them off? Because I know they're not checked in this, and I can make them checked in this, but I want to make sure this is where they're supposed to be checked.
That's just like a reminder to the person who's filling this out that you need to have those things attached or your reimbursement is not going to move forward.
Okay.
All right. Like for EIR, that automatically happens in your process.
Right. And in this form, they can't go forward without putting those attachments in.
So could it automatically check the box if once they upload?
Yeah, we can handle that. Yep.
Okay, great.
No problem there.
Okay. The next question I had was, so when the form generates, that the PDF that was attached that had the total at the bottom. So on page 2 of the PDF of your final form, can you bring that up?
This one?
So like that's the attachment sheet that they would put their receipts on. There was confusion as to whether or not that page should even be there because they're uploading everything. They wouldn't even need that page because that's where they would tape their receipts. So they they weren't sure, like, should I still have this? Like, what should I do? So I think, I mean, our intent, of course, is for them to upload everything electronically. So we could eliminate that last
Okay.
page where,
I mean, that's fine. This was just we ran with what you all,
yeah, I
yeah.
know.
So we can just, you want to remove page 2? Do you want page 3 still on there? Because we can also just put these instructions at the top of the form and then you would just,
Yeah, I mean, if that was built into the form, I think that would be fine.
okay.
Electronic version, versus them having to fill it out by paper. And I will say, like down the road, I'm gonna have Chris is gonna help us with like a full automation of this district wide where we can maybe have an app built that would simplify the whole RTA process, everything for everybody. But that's going to be in the future, a long time coming. So
All right, so we'll take out those 2 pages for you and they won't be part of the attachment.
yeah, I don't think we don't need that.
Okay, and we can pull the meal part's already pulled in, but we can pull in the rest of the information too.
And can you make sure that the mileage rate gets updated to 70 cents since it did change?
Yeah. Okay.
I almost forgot about that. Let's see, what else did I have on there? Somebody said that the documents that they uploaded were not attached. I didn't have that problem whenever I did it, so I don't know what happened with that. Oh, Morgan.
Did this got tested all the way through? Like, did you test like the supervisor levels and stuff to see how that piece worked, or only
Yeah, like internally, we were sending it to each other to um
how was that piece?
somebody mistyped somebody's email, but that's just
Right.
gonna happen.
Does that piece is that piece meeting your needs, or is that workflow not working? I mean, I guess I want to know, like, does that need to be adapted in any way?
I thought it was fine. I thought that part was fine. I did want to ask Abby, so I know you guys have your process for RTAs where you link to Airtable. Like, would you like to see this for EIR in in the same way that you have your RTAs where you have your workflow built in like you have your RTAs versus us having to type in the email addresses too, or
For their EIRs, it will be. For for their RTAs, everything that it like where you guys for the standard user, you have to put in your name and you have to put in like your basic information. For theirs, the person will pick the RTA and everything that's tied to that RTA will pre-populate.
okay.
Including who it goes to and who the approvers are. So they won't have to do any of that because their teachers and their RTAs are already in the system.
Okay. Okay.
So some of those pieces will be like the reason for all of these things they won't have to input any of it.
Okay.
And if we knew, go ahead. I was gonna say the big thing for you guys is like because it's an individual user that's not in the system, we just don't know who the supervisor is, and so that's why we asked. But
Yeah, so is it a long term? Chris is going to be helping build something out that would like link to all of our data in Munis and all that, but that's a long term project. So, but in the meantime, I would like to, still have a option for everybody to do things in a different way that may be easier for them versus paper. So, yeah, that was all the feedback that I had. So if we can work from there to see, and then once we make those changes, I have a few departments who have volunteered to be testers that have heavy travel. So like once we get the other kinks out, then I think we'll be ready to move forward for more wider testing.
so a couple of things we can do as an overhaul. And you tell me if this is in your like frame of mind a better solution. We could potentially take this travel start date and travel end date, force fill out to run a calculation of how many days are between those two, and whatever the number is, show the questions about meals or lodging or whatever. So if it's 6 days, show 6 days to put lodging amounts in, show 6 days to put meals in, like those pieces, instead of a day per, like a page per each day. We can do that if that would be
I think that would be great if we can do that.
okay. All right, so days. And you want to keep the per day lodging.
Yeah, I do think so, because sometimes we might have where a person, we need to deduct something because they may try to tack on a personal day. So we have had instances where we have to like say, no, that's considered a personal expense. Like if you show up 3 days early, you don't get, that's vacation.
Okay.
But,
Okay. And then so we want a place to put in the registration amount. And you want that to be on day one? Like tied to day one, I guess is what I'm asking.
could it be under,
And where do you want it on here? Do you want that to be under other?
other, it would go under other.
Okay.
Instead of it being under day one, could it be part of the first part that they fill out? I mean, it's going to be so rare that somebody has a registration expense.
Well, I guess what I mean when I say like day one, you want it to be calculated in the day one other total, or you just want it calculate like I don't know where it shows on this version of the form.
Yeah, I think you're asking me. That's yeah, I think it could just calculate in the day one other. It's fine.
Okay, so we'll do that. And then for other transportation, do you want to keep think about what you spent money on, or do you just want to leave it as one other transportation for each day and drop the taxi, parking, airfare piece?
Let me ask other people's opinions here. What do you think?
I kind of like dropping the 4 fields and just putting it in a help text that says taxi, Uber. I mean, basically all the headings there, just in a help text. I think that would get the point across as well.
Yeah, so could we have for other, I gotta look at the form. I'm not beholden to that form. It was just done really quickly because
Right.
the policy got passed and we needed a new form. So we just kind of pushed something out quickly without having a lot of time to really be thoughtful about best way to do things. So
I do love Chris's optimism though. I will combine them. I have no objections to that. We've been doing this for 5 years, and the number of people that don't read, I'm not gonna say can't read, like don't read that are educators is phenomenal to me, right? But I think
also they can't do math.
Yes, that too, right? But we'll streamline it. However, if that's the easiest piece, we're happy to do it. But I do love the optimism that like if it's there.
I love it. I think
I'm open to whatever the group wants.
I like the idea of mileage and then other transportation with this is everything else, basically. Like this is your
right.
Uber.
If you don't read it, then it's your fault. I got it.
Right.
And if you do it that way and then you just find that like nobody remembers to put in like one of them, right? Like people typically remember their airfare, but if they forget they took an Uber or whatever, and you want to go back and say like, can we put Uber back in because people forget to do it? Let us know. We can always change it.
Out of luck, you've been reimbursed. It's
okay, so we'll condense all of those to one outside of the miles piece. And then you still need the origin and destination for each of the days that they travel. I know you have that on your PDF, but if you don't need it, like you're from and to.
yeah, just because if they're traveling local, like they're traveling in state, they may be going multiple places.
Okay.
Could be so.
So we'll keep that. And then do you need this? We use it, the other transportation description. I don't even know if I have this locked down. I actually have it hidden, so you guys haven't seen it. I think I left in there to ask you during this meeting, but it sounds like you don't. You don't need them to tell you what is encompassed in it because you're just gonna have the receipts.
Right.
Okay, so we'll nix that.
Hopefully they can figure that out.
All right, and so then we're gonna have them check these and we'll put the numbers in based on what they select, and it's gonna be for the overall form for in-state, out-state because it's the same, which is
Yeah.
really nice because for us it's not, and it's not fun, but it's there. Okay. And then lodging costs for the 7 days. And then this is still saying this is your other.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And then you guys aren't using that, so we won't worry about it. And then on your review sheet, we're dropping these boxes. And so that since you're dropping page 2, you don't even need on the PDF for us to have fill out, put in the total calculation,
Oh.
right? Like that's
Mhm.
okay. So we can take that whole calculation out. This is all information that they put in. This is going to come out looking a little bit different once we put it all in, change it over, but it'll be good. And then you said on the side of like going to the supervisor and the bookkeeper and all of that, that's running.
That worked fine.
Okay. And I
think
can't
there was-
remember. Go ahead.
So I think there was an issue with the account numbers, and I'm sorry, I don't have that note. I remember when somebody in here tested something. Something was not populating correctly for the account number. And I don't remember what it was. So
I think
it was maybe it was like something to do with the amounts. I think the amount from something was like pre-populating and it was confusing. And I don't know where that note went about that that I had, but can we like type something in there and see what happens? Just to
so this one, I want to make sure. This one, if the teacher puts it in, then an amount will show. If the teacher doesn't, then the bookkeeper or principal or whoever else up the chain of command can put something in.
okay.
If it comes with an amount, it's whatever the teacher originally entered.
I remember what it was. It's because account number 2 was a required field, and we don't usually use account number 2. It's just there are some programs that occasionally have to split expenses. So
Okay.
I put something in account 2. So I don't want to make that required. I remember now.
That's an easy fix. We can do that. So no account 2 requirement.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like there are some programs that do have to split things out where there's a split between federal and general operating fund, but it's not usual.
Okay. So we'll scrap that as required. So that's not a problem. Okay. And then I think the other piece is if you have automations that you want to go, I think we have some already built in for you. I can't get my brain to work as I'm looking at this. There we go. So we have some automations already structured for you that, of course, like trigger the emails to who signed it and who's going, and then the emails that go back to the teacher to say like this was indicated as incorrect and like can you fix it? Were you okay with those emails that were generated? Do you need any emails
yeah,
to be automated?
we do need to, well, we need to change the we need to create the language. We need to change the language in the emails, but I didn't know, we don't need to do that now, do we?
No, but if you have like a standard like boilerplate communication that you want us to use, we can drop that in. Yep. And then I think right now all of these are coming from me and they don't even come from me.
They are coming from you.
So that might be a little weird, but otherwise, yeah. So that's definitely something we can iron out too for you.
Okay. So like who will they come from? Like when will they just come from like a
So that's up to you. And Abby weigh in on this too in terms of just like who is in this Airtable. If you want them to come like from you or I think at one point you said you had a generic like accounting email, like we could add that to have it added as the sender. Somebody with the authority to access the account has to have an Airtable account is the caveat there. So that's up to you all. But once you say like, this is the email we wanted to come from, I can help the person set it up.
Okay.
EAR has a generic one they use, and we just like, we build the automations, and then Abby goes in and puts her email into it, and it just comes from that email.
Yeah, we do have a generic one. I may end up, I'm gonna try to get another one actually pretty soon. So, instead of it coming from accounts payable, I may it come from like accounting. It's not a big deal for me to get another generic email address.
Okay. Yeah. However you guys decide it, like if you, where you want them to come from, we can just help you get it in, set it up. But I mention it because as of right now, this Airtable is owned by EAR. So if we add an accounting person, Abby, that's going to be on your subscription plan. So
Could it be like travel reimbursements at Charleston?
it could be whatever you want it to be. I just need the person that knows the password to be the one to put it in. So yeah, and then I guess the same question is like, you guys have one at the end where the bookkeeper or the whoever it is, like the last person to touch it before it goes to accounting. If there's a generic email that should go to, we want to put that in too.
Yeah, that would be accounts payable. So
okay, yeah, so we just want to get the emails updated.
So
we can
I'm considering a different one for travel reimbursements just because right now there's so much stuff that goes into that mailbox. I'm considering like trying to do a separate one to make things a little cleaner. It just gets confusing when you have so many email boxes that are delegated to you.
Right. And one of the things that we do, that you tell me if it's useful or not, but one of the things we do for EAR when they do their RTAs is if it's the principal, the executive director, or the supervisor, they are pinged each time like an approval is needed. But when it gets above them, we have an automation that runs that sends, if Airtable wants to decide to work a little faster today. So like for Mrs. Huggins, she gets a daily email, and what it ends up looking like, I'm just gonna guess that this one. Let's see if I can generate a preview because it's not gonna let me see the sent one. So she gets a daily email that just says like, hey, these are the people that are pending approval. And then she goes into the link that she has access to and she can approve them at her leisure. But she just gets, so if she doesn't have any, if there are no pending approvals, she doesn't get an email. But it gives her an.
Could that happen with them typing in their principal's email address or no?
In terms of like the principal has pending approvals, probably not. I'm not gonna say absolutely no, but I'm like 60-40 on that. For accounting though, like because they're all gonna come into that, you could get an email of just like, instead of every time one is sent to accounting, like if the bookkeeper says send it and the principal says send it and somebody else down the line says send it, you could just get one email a day that says these are all of the pending ones you have as of today.
I love that versus a million of those coming in.
Yeah, we can definitely do that for accounting. And then, I mean, the other piece is if you said, if we built out some of this the way the EIR is built out and we put in all of your schools and the principals that are affiliated with those schools, then yes, that gives us the ability, because we have them in the system, to let the teacher say, this is my school, and then they can only pick their principal, right? And then the school has a bookkeeper tied to them too, and the principal just have to put the bookkeeper's email in. He just says, send it to the bookkeeper, and it pulls the email that's in Airtable and does that too. So it's a matter of like, how much data do you want to put into Airtable to streamline that process and take away that human error piece? But we can do that.
Yeah, I think we're limited on our space, right, Abby?
In terms of like putting in your schools?
Yeah, like how many people, because I mean, we've got 7,000 people, like, because everybody does travel. It's not just, I think.
Well, we work with Sacramento do their Airtable for their stuff, and they have 10,000 schools, and we haven't hit the cap yet. So if it's something that you want in there, there is potential to be able to do that.
Well, and like as we think about that or adding everybody, or are you talking about potential use like district-wide stuff and Amanda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
If you
so
wanted all your principles in there, would that be something you'd want to try to build into it?
I totally think we could do that. And I think if that's the next, I think we do. And I think we have enough space. And I think that if that's something we do, Chris, I would rely on us having another conversation, including Mariana, to see what Mariana can handle. I'm thinking like pulling data and things like that and structuring some of the workflows. And she's created lots of views for different people. So she could take on some of that work in collaboration with you, Amanda. I don't know what you think about that, Chris and Stephanie.
I'm open to it. If we can take that information and put it in Airtable, we can plan out the data fields that we would need. We can put it in any way that would make sense for this. And as I understand it, to update that information, like if we were to take a spreadsheet of all 8,000 employees and hand that over every day, I mean, what does that process look like? How do we keep people updated in the system?
Yeah, so that I think is the biggest piece for me that I don't have a lot of insight on the Munis side, right? Like in terms of how Munis works and how Munis can talk to other systems. So an example that we do that could be an option for you all, but I don't know because I don't know Munis, is
Mhm.
Airtable doesn't talk to Zoom directly and Zoom doesn't talk to Airtable directly, but we use Make to make that circle complete. And so I can have people sign up in Airtable and it will register them in Zoom and I don't have to have them do that twice. So if there is a way for Munis to say to Make or to Airtable, depending on how it works, this is a change and run an automation that makes that update, that would be the most beautiful way to do it. Otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, are there built-in import processes? Can we say like create a base with this data set, and then every day we hand it a new data set and say update the base, or does it have to be? Do we have to have a bunch of manual things and rules put in there to tell it what to do?
it kind of depends on how it works. I will say, like, you're not, and I don't have like a price point in my head in terms of how the subscription works. You're limited to the number of automations you can have per base. I would give you guys a base that hosts like all of your just data of your employees, and we would sync it to the other bases you need, the reimbursement base, the RTA base, right? Like, so it would just be run. But the other limitation is like how many runs of automations you get a month. And it's up there. It's in the thousands upon thousands, but depending on how many times you guys were doing this, that would be the bigger question. Right
Yeah, I
now,
mean, it'd be like one per day. I can't imagine we would need more than that.
well, it's an automation per record, right? So let's say you have an automation that says update a record when an address changes. Well, if you have 16
Gotcha.
address changes, that's 16 automation triggers that have run, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Um,
gotcha.
which is not possible, but like just like things that I think, kind of hidden amongst the background noise. Um, one of the things we do right now is they're doing a frontline dump into a Google spreadsheet, and Airtable, every time a record is updated in a Google spreadsheet, there's some stuff that will pull that into Airtable, and we're able to do that. So that's also something that is done. I just don't know how Munis would need to know how Munis talks to Airtable. Now I know that there are multiple higher ed institutions that use Airtable and tie it into like their software that's similar to Munis. So I'm sure there are ways. I would just need to kind of learn
I
some more
gotcha. Yeah,
instance.
long story short, Munis doesn't really talk to anything. But
Okay.
that's we have a team of people that can uh make those inter-app conversations happen. So we can
Okay.
pull data out of Munis, and it looks like Airtable has an API, and contact Airtable's API and give it all the data that we need.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, if you guys could do that, then you have it in there, and then you just may have those updates run, and then it's everything else runs based on the information that's in there, the updated information that's in there.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do some research on if that is a route we can go, if API access is included with our current licensure. It looks like, yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to do some research into that.
Okay. Yeah, we are actually going up in our API in your Munis licensure or API in your Airtable licensure. When
Airtable.
you said if it's included or Airtable, okay. I didn't know if there were levels, like in Power School there are levels.
Yeah, it looks like Airtable has it's broken out by free, teams, business, and enterprise. I don't know if we fall under one of those.
You do. We are currently trying to move up to business, and you all are, I can tell you.
I think right up at the top says we're in the
yeah,
business
your
plan.
business.
Yeah.
I was gonna see if you guys had any additions, but it doesn't look like it. Yeah, so you guys are your business.
Okay. And it says we have access to all base data endpoints. So I'll have to look into what that means and what we can do with it. But that might be an avenue to automatically get data into Airtable, which is what we would want because, I mean, every day we've got people moving locations, people leaving the district, people joining the district, and we'd want to make sure that all that information that needs to be selected in that form is updated at least once a day.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the big piece is each time you guys add someone to Airtable, right? There's gonna be an annual charge for that person. So that's something to kind of determine how many more people you would need. Not like it as a record, but like if you get in there so that you can make edits and do all that stuff, like the membership for you. So each, like if you
As
said
someone that's going to be
people,
interacting with
yeah,
the
if you're
API,
going to be
probably.
anything more than read only, then
Yeah.
there will be a charge, an annual charge for you.
But if I'm a standard user, like a principal filling out an RTA or filling out a mileage form or any of that, I don't need a license.
Nope, because you're not actually in
Okay.
there using it. You're just interacting with it through a third party
Gotcha.
form. Well, I'm glad you're
Well,
okay
yeah,
with Stephanie.
if that's an avenue we're going to go down, then I don't know where that licensure comes from or how much those are, but maybe we would just have one BIM support license that can facilitate those kinds of automations.
Well, Chris, you and I can work together on that. Currently, it's under you're talking about the EIR, the Airtable, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's currently under EIR, but I am almost positive we have more users. I mean, I can add you if you want to look and play in there, because what I would, and
Yeah, by all means.
I really hate saying this out loud. Chris, think I want to schedule a meeting with you and Amanda to talk through WSF automation
Okay.
and how the plans can be submitted, and changes that could, just as a talking point.
What is WSF?
So Amanda, that is a large project that has pulled me in my time. It's weighted student funding, so it's $35 million distributed across schools, and I manage all the plans and all the changes and all the budgets.
Okay.
Just a little bit, just a tiny amount.
All right. Sure. Happy to help however we can.
I don't know how you sleep, Abby.
This week, not very well. Okay, is there any other things? So Stephanie, do you feel complete?
Yeah. I do. I feel better. I know, like, you were closed for Christmas break and we were closed for Christmas break, and I had people that were out that were doing testing, and just took a lot to get to this point. So
And then
No
Amanda,
worries at all. Yeah.
I don't know if you heard, but we had a snowstorm in Charleston, and like the whole place had to shut down for like a whole week.
Yeah, we were the same. We didn't go back that first week after. I mean, I say that my husband's a teacher, but like he didn't go back that first week after because of all the crazy weather. So, yeah.
Ours was Martin Luther King week, but
Well, we'll work on getting these things turned over so that you can look at it and see if that fits more into like what you were thinking. And the big thing for me is like if you look at it before you have other people looking at it and there's just a red flag like right away, I don't want you to send it out with a red flag to have other people test it. I'd rather fix it for you so when you send it out, like they come back and say it works. So any way we can do that for you, just let me know.
Okay.
We're happy to do it. And then once I get it updated, I will let you know. My goal would be by the end of next week. We have to do some DC work, some grant work and evaluation work next week, but that would be my goal is to have all the updates ironed out for you by next week.
Amanda, are you going to the thing next week?
Jennifer's going to be there.
She is.
Yeah, Jennifer and Sandy and somebody else. But Alicia and I are not. We will not be there.
I'll have
Before
to.
we wrap up, Abby, can you hang back?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying, can I,
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, Chris.
thanks, guys.
if I drop off, is it
Thanks,
gonna,
everybody.
I think who's the host?
let
Is it
me,
you?
all right, let me move the host.
I love when that happens when people are like, "Oh, bye," and then they just go.
Yeah, I was like, wait, I'm the host. I can't do that.
I think, Steph, if you go to the participants,
Yeah, I got you. I'm changing you to the host. All right, you're good.
thanks.
Thanks, Stephanie.
I'm about to hop off. But what's the
Okay.
You're still sharing your screen, but I
Thank
minimized it.
you.
You saw my last message was